Based on all of the data, the vaccines are safe and effective. The FDA typically follows the vaccines for 8 weeks after the second dose just to see if there are any short-term effects, and we don't see anything like that with these vaccines. Also, the Pfizer vaccine is approved, but if you still have concerns, you should consider consulting your physician or pharmacist. So the technology based on for the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines, it was really developed 30 years ago. And it wasn't until now that we could actually put it to use and test it to make sure that it was actually effective the way that we thought it would be. It was used previously for Ebola, but that wasn't worldwide the way that this SARS-CoV-2 pandemic was. And now with this pandemic, everybody was focused on finding a solution. And so now we have a lot of money, a lot of people interested in joining clinical trials, and a real focus on finding the solution. There were no steps that were missed, so everything followed the way that normal vaccines are approved, and we're continuing to follow to make sure that there are no side effects. And so far, we're seeing that they are safe and effective. So vaccines go through clinical trials in 3 phases. Each of those phases focuses on safety and efficacy so that we can roll this out to larger populations. The FDA requires that vaccine companies report data no sooner than 8 weeks after the second dose, and that's really to look at short-term side effects. All vaccines that have side effects, generally you see those in that first 8 weeks. All of the data is collected, sent to the FDA, and evaluated by the FDA and independent monitoring boards to ensure that they are safe and effective and will have benefit in a population. Yes, the vaccines are safe and effective. There have been just under 400 million doses administered in the United States so far, and by all accounts, they are safe and effective. We continue to monitor the safety and efficacy, and we will continue to monitor long into the future just to ensure that there aren't any rare events that are coming up. But by all the data we've seen right now, they are safe and effective. Really, the risk is quite low. The way that I think about this is taking aspirin. If you take aspirin, 1 aspirin a day is not really going to, but if you start taking aspirin chronically, that's when you're going to start running into problems and have side effects from the aspirin. And it's really due to the long-term use. The vaccines are designed to stimulate an immune response and then to be degraded so that they're not in circulation for a long time. And because we're only getting 1 or 2 doses, maybe a booster shot, the long-term effects are not really going to be seen the way that we see side effects with the aspirin. So obviously, there is a slight risk that we could see something happen in the future in a small percentage of the population. But the FDA typically looks in that short term, 8 weeks after the second dose, to ensure that there is no short-term side effects, and that generally also indicates that there's going to be a very low risk of long-term side effects. Yes, the vaccine works. The vaccines were designed really to prevent hospitalization and death. So there's a lot of talk right now about breakthrough infections, but breakthrough infections are expected even if you've been vaccinated. There are very few vaccines that work by inhibiting infection altogether. And so this is kind of expected. I think the important thing to be aware of is that while only about 50% of the United States is vaccinated, the people in the hospital, it's about 90% of the people in the hospital are unvaccinated. And that difference is really important. And that data suggests and shows us that the vaccines are doing what they're supposed to do, keeping you out of the hospital. So I remember back when I was a child and I would take children's Tylenol or children's vitamins, especially the Flintstone kind. They're not designed because they have good flavors or because of the characters. They're really designed because of dose, and it's to dose a child to take the appropriate medicine for their body size. And so really, it's not that we're concerned about the safety of the COVID vaccines in children. It's really identifying the dose, just like children's Tylenol, so that we can give them a dose that's more appropriate for their body size instead of giving them the adult dose, which could have adverse consequences in the children. No, there's no evidence that the vaccine will impact your fertility. but there is evidence that COVID might. Yes, the vaccines are safe and effective and shown to be safe and effective in pregnant individuals. The CDC also recommends that pregnant individuals should get the vaccine. And the vaccine is really designed to help enhance your immune response to the virus if you are infected. And what's important to know is that people who are pregnant, they have a weakened immune system because their baby needs to be able to grow. And getting the vaccine actually helps enhance your immune system to prevent transmission, certainly to you, but also to prevent transmission to the child. And we know that people with weakened immune systems have worse outcomes, and we also know that the virus can be transmitted to babies in utero. So it's really important to get the vaccine to protect yourself, but also to protect your baby. Yeah, there is a high survival rate with this virus, but there's still over 600,000 people in the United States that have died. And it can get worse with new variants. So the vaccine is really designed to help limit transmission, to help limit the spread of the virus. And we know that when the virus spreads and spreads in people who are not vaccinated, that new variants can come up. And those variants can be worse and can certainly cause a lot more death in certain populations. So vaccination is really the only way we're going to get out of the pandemic, and it's important to be vaccinated regardless of what the survival rate of a virus is, because it can get worse. No, unfortunately, no, it doesn't. Really, we don't really understand what happens when somebody's infected and what causes one person to be infected and end up in the hospital, and what prevents another person from being infected and ending up in the hospital. We know that diabetes and obesity and certain complications can cause an increased risk of hospitalization and death, but there's plenty of stories of fit, lean, healthy individuals, young individuals who are ending up hospitalized and dying. And not only that, experiencing effects of long COVID and complications from the viral infection. So it's really important to be vaccinated so that you do have that enhanced immunity from the vaccine. And then we don't have to play with, well, I'm healthy enough that it's not going to affect me. Vaccination is the only thing that's really going to help you stay out of the hospital and prevent death. No, unfortunately it doesn't. When people are infected with the virus, they get a variable response, and we can't predict what type of response a person's going to get and whether or not they're going to be protected in the future. What we do know is that the vaccine is designed to induce a strong immune response, and that is true in most people. And that strong immune response also generates a memory immune response, and that's how you remember, that's how your immune system remembers how to respond to the virus in the future. And so really it's the vaccine that gives us the strongest immune response and the most predictable immune response that's going to keep us out of the hospital. Booster shots are very common with vaccines, and you've probably gotten a booster shot with your flu vaccine every year, and also with tetanus. Every 10 years you'll get a booster shot. This doesn't mean that the vaccines are not working. This simply means that you're giving your immune system a boost. It's giving it a little bit of help so that it can respond in the future, and you're generating that immune response and that memory response that helps you respond better in the future. So it doesn't mean that the vaccines aren't working. It's just providing that extra oomph to keep us protected to prevent hospitalization. It's unclear at this point who's going to need booster shots and when we're going to need them, and I think that there's a lot more data that needs to be collected. There is evidence that some people, like immune-compromised or older populations, will very likely need booster shots, but we're still collecting data on this, and that information will be coming soon, and hopefully we'll have more clarity around whether or not we will need boosters for the future.